Hello everyone and welcome to NFL Discussion. I'm your host and NFL enthusiast Dougie Doug. In today's episode I'm going to be discussing Thursday Night Football Week 13 of the 2023 NFL season. Seahawks versus Cowboys. What an entertaining game this was. And we're going to go ahead and get right into the action, starting with the Seattle Seahawks. And playing the toughest defense he's faced in 2023, Geno Smith had by far his best start of the year. The 3-score effort through the air was his first of the season, while the rushing touchdown was also his first. Although constantly pressured, especially in the second half, Smith took 0 sacks. He seemed focused on getting the ball out faster than he has been for much of the year. The main story was his connection with DK Metcalf, who was frequently matched up with Deron Bland's coverage. Smith also found each of Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba for at least 5 grabs, and even hooked up with Noah Fant for a few big plays. He deserved a better fate than a loss, but Dak Prescott was somehow even better on the other side of the ball. Tonight's pop-up effort might just be a one-off, as Smith now faces a rematch with a 49ers defense, or now has a rematch with a 49ers defense that bottled him up for a scoreless 180 yards on Thanksgiving. Zach Charbonnet was grinding out tough yards in Kenneth Walker's absence, but his last touch was a no-gains timing on 4th and 1 midway through the fourth quarter. He then was taken out of the game with what it was announced as a knee injury and then reported as doubtful to return. Did not return. DJ Dallas finished out the game in the backfield. Charbonnet could have had a multi-score night, but was stood up on a handful of other carries inside the 5. His only true goal line handle was a 1-yard score where he converted in the second quarter. The doubtful takes suggest he could have a more serious injury. The Seahawks do have 10 days until their next game, so hopefully at the very least Kenneth Walker can return, if not Charbonnet. DK Metcalf was facing both one of his toughest teams and individual assignments in the Cowboys, and DROY contending cornerback Deron Bland. Metcalf somehow though had by far his best game of the year, posting a new season high for yards while doubling down his touchdown total. The scoring started with a 73-yard catch and run. He then beat Bland off the line to the goal line for another score in the closing seconds of the second quarter. Bland was also the closest defender when play action freed Metcalf in the end zone for his 3rd touchdown. Awesome performance here. Also likely a one-off as the Seahawks do prepare for their rematch against the 49ers. So give credit to Geno Smith. He certainly tried. And to close out the second quarter, he was able to lead a 2-minute drive down the field and put up some points. Could not do it though to try to win the game in the 4th, as Micah Parsons came off the line unblocked and simply just blew that play up. I'll also give a shout out to DK Metcalf, who put on a show with 3 touchdowns. And another negative for both teams in this game were the penalties. Seattle had 10 for 130, Dallas had 9 for 127, so sloppy game in that regard. Although I feel like some of those penalties were unwarranted. Ultimately Seattle they were lucky that this game didn't get away from them with all those penalties that they had. Very inspiring performance after the last one against the 49ers, but again, they played the same 49ers team that snuffed them out on Thanksgiving. So, is this just a one-off performance, or can they do this again? I guess we shall see. Dallas Cowboys, dealing with a surprisingly feisty Seahawks offense. Dak Prescott always had the counterpunch, playing a nearly flawless game as he traded scores with Geno Smith before eventually emerging triumphant. Prescott's timing was precise and his touch feathery. He tossed 0 picks for the 8th time in 12 starts and continued to relentlessly work his connection with CeeDee Lamb, finding his number 1 wideout. Work his connection with CeeDee Lamb. He also hit Brandon Cooks and Jake Ferguson for scores, playing like an MVP for the better part of 2 months. Prescott has a Week 14 smash spot in the Eagles' leaky pass defense. For Tony Pollard, another inefficient night on the ground for a running back who keeps failing the eye test. Pollard does not look the same going side to side this season, but he still continued his positive touchdown regression by finding the end zone for the 3rd time in as many weeks. Even as he struggles to turn up yards, it never made sense that Pollard was having so much trouble scoring in his elite offense. He is still also largely holding off Rico Dallins' touch heat. Despite low YPCs and awful advanced metrics, Pollard will remain the starting running back in Week 14 against the Eagles' tough ground defense. And CeeDee Lamb was eating Rick Woolen's lunch here, shaking off a mini slump by matching his season high in catches and setting a new high water mark for targets. He also tacked on some fourth quarter yards via a DPI. Never mind his 4th and 2 drop in the final frame. Playing elite league-leading type football for the better part of 2 months. Lamb has an explosive Week 14 set up for what should be a high total affair with Philadelphia's leaky secondary. So give credit to Dallas' defense. They struggled in terms of keeping Seattle off the board, giving up 35 points. But when it mattered most, they made some stops late in the game to seal the deal. And that is, I mean, obviously trying to limit the opposing offense is one thing, but being able to close out the game in the end, pretty good right there. And CeeDee Lamb, he didn't have 3 touchdowns, but he did catch 12 of 17 targets for 116 yards and a touchdown. So CeeDee Lamb, DK Metcalf put it on the show. Geno Smith and Dak Prescott put it on the show. And Deron Bland, he added another pick to his interception total. It wasn't a pick 6, but he continues on his great rookie season. But he certainly had his fair share of struggles in this game. He got picked on often, most notably in coverage against DK Metcalf. But when it came time to make a play, he did just that. So Cowboys get a win here and continue on their quest for the #1 seed. Ultimately, how that goes kind of depends on how the Eagles fare against the 49ers. If the Eagles lose to the 49ers, it keeps the Cowboys realistically within shot of getting that #1 seed. Granted, they got to beat the Eagles themselves. And as for the Seahawks, well, I don't know where this loss, just tell me I should look to see where this loss bumped them in the playoff rankings, but they are 6-6, and they are still, yeah, they're in an interesting spot, because if the Rams win on Sunday, then the Rams would leapfrog them and push them to the outside of the playoff picture. So Seattle's not out of it, but this loss certainly sets them back, and they are going to, this loss sets them back and could potentially knock them out of the postseason playoff picture, or at least put them back in the hunt and not in the current playoff picture. Again, the Rams are in a good spot to leapfrog them. And with that, that will conclude this episode of NFL Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.